talk my sister into giving me a black market Corona
Back
haircut.
alley,
What's that?
back alley kind of
Yeah,
wheeling and dealing.
I don't know. I mean, you know what? I went to her house yesterday, and I mean, we're technically now allowed to kind of do stuff like that. So I don't know how black market it actually is, but I feel like a human
Hmm.
being again.
No, it's good to start getting a little bit, all right, getting back to
Yeah,
how things were.
yeah. I mean, I'm slowly. I would lose my shit if we had to stick with this for that much longer.
It's stuff is slowly opening up.
Yeah, yeah. Tomorrow we'll. And being that I don't know if you've seen the Facebook group, but there's a bunch of gyms and salons that have said that June 1st they're just going to open whether they get permission or not.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
They can safely do it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I have no doubt that they can safely do it, so I'm not really worried. It's just a matter of whether or not the governor is just going to shut them down.
Yeah.
You know. Um, so anyway, you have a pretty unique hobby, I'd say,
Yeah,
right?
a little bit of
A
unique,
little
yeah.
bit of kind of unique. So
Um,
you would classify yourself as a fanatic of roller coasters, right?
yeah, enthusiast, yeah, definitely someone of,
Enthusiast,
yeah.
fanatic, same difference.
Yeah, I've theme parks, roller coasters. Oh yeah, I'm all about that. When I have time to be able to go on a vacation or go away, it's going to a theme park, trying to ride some crazy ride or something.
So where did that all start?
Oh, when I was young, so both my parents went on rides too, so that always going on rides when I was young, and um, also being in New Jersey, very close to Six Flags Great Adventure, always had passes growing up, so I was always there, always riding and with my parents, and then my cousins, we'd all get together and go and ride. So I started young, enjoying them and going to the parks and had fun at them. But I know it was more in high school, like when I really did a lot more research into them and just realized, oh wow, there's this crazy ride out, and like seeing what other rides were out there, and it just really kind of went from there.
So high school was really where it started to kind of take shape
Yeah,
as like a real passion and
yeah,
something that you
really,
were like involved with.
yeah,
Um, Now you also worked at a theme park.
yeah. So through
Let's
high school, that was kind of my high school job.
what was that like?
It was a fun experience. It's definitely hard, long days. But it's fun. You meet a lot of people and interacting with some of the guests, and you also learn a lot about people in general, about how people act.
What do
it's
you
it's
mean?
so it's very interesting. So my first year, um, I was in games because I was only 15 years old, and the story how I got the job, it was funny. It's 2003, like January. They were building Superman Ultimate Flight. So I asked my dad, I was like, hey, let's go through the employee entrance and try and get pictures of the construction because they're building it in the parking lot. And he's like, well, if we're using the excuse we're going to the employment center, why not stop out, fill an application, just see, because you're 15, you can work something. So, went, took photos of it, went, filled out an application, went, had a little interview, and they're like, all right, we're going to hire you in games. I was like, okay, cool, got a job. So, all right, this is like kind of the first stepping stone to working at a park. And then once I did that season in games, which that was fun, you meet a lot of people and learn the tricks of the games, which they are not rigged. I know everyone's like, oh, these are rigs. They're just a little bit tougher.
So none of the games are rigged?
No, like I like the basketball hoops. They're regular size hoops. They are regular size hoops. I remember working at that. The guess your age and weight game, because I had to do that a couple of times. That is a giveaway because I probably won't get in trouble now, but because you pay like $5
Oh, you're
to
not
do it.
working there anymore, so I doubt they can
Yeah,
say anything.
it was a 40-cent prize. Pretty like you see the invoice of what they get this stuff for.
Hmm.
So you're paying $5. And then they're like, yeah, this is a giveaway game. This is they're pretty much you're guaranteed to pretty much walk away with a prize from the guess your age weight thing, and because they just put anyone there. They're like, and I remember when I got put there, I was like, is there any advice? They're like, if it's a woman, just go as low as you can go if you're guessing the weight. That was the only advice they ever gave. They're like, just that's the only advice you can give you.
Just go as low as you can if it's a woman.
Yeah, it's like you
For
don't want
both.
any no fights. I was like,
It's like you weigh
okay,
100 pounds and you look
yeah.
23.
And then once I finished that season, I was able to transfer into rides because in 16 you're allowed to operate the rides. And then
Hold on, let's stick with the games for a
okay,
second. Because like I think about games like the ring toss where you gotta like toss those little red rings over the top of the bottle cap, the glass like jugs.
mm-hmm.
You know what game I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. I've worked
I
in the
know it's
area where that
physically possible to
it
fit that
is. You
ring
just got to
over.
hit it right. That's the
Have
thing.
you
It
ever seen
is.
anybody actually win any of those games?
I've seen people hit it. I've seen
So it
people
is
hit it.
actually possible.
It is possible. It's just you just. It's. I think it's more luck that you're just. I the one time I've seen like two people win. The one time I saw the guy bought the big bucket of rings that has like 20. I don't know how many rings were in it. He just tossed it and one magically, just landed.
I guess that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, it's just like all
And
right,
you
just
only have to
toss.
get one too, right?
Yeah, you only have to get one
You
to
only got to
win
get one,
yeah,
so
that's
like
it.
just shower the rings down.
So he's
No
like, that's it. I'm
technique.
just chucking the whole bucket, and he got one. So I was like, yeah, that kind of works.
Oh, all right. That's actually pretty interesting because like I don't think that I ever would have thought of doing something like that, but I guess it works, right?
Like, because it really is. You just have to hit it right. So I don't know. You have to really just spin it and land it right. So I guess just throwing them all,
Right.
maybe just something fell correctly.
I'll keep that in mind this summer if any of those games ever open back up. Okay, so
Oh, it is,
you
yeah.
16 now. You moved on to rides.
Yeah, so I got to go into rides, and they kind of auto assign you. Like you can't just be like, I want this. Um,
So you don't get to pick. They just say, okay, we need an operator for Nitro
yeah, or this
or
section.
Superman or this section or
Yeah.
that section.
So my first year, I got in at Great American Screen Machine when that was still there, and that was fun. That was an easy ride to work because it's very old school computer, so it was very not a lot of sensors on it, but it was just an easy system to kind of work, and you can get trains rolling and get people on and off. Um, and I was the kind of person when I was there, and I was the kind of person when I was there. So a couple of months in, they were like, "Oh, this area is short. Like runaway train needs someone to get trained and run for the day." So I'd be like, "I'll do it." Like what? I'll want to learn every ride I can. So
Yeah.
I know because I still have some of my tags. So this is like my name tag. This was the cert card because you had to carry this card, and then every punch is like what ride you worked.
So how do they train you on stuff like that?
So they have someone that's like a certified trainer. You go, you learn like how the ride works, how many ride stop buttons there are, when to dispatch trains, all this stuff, the proper way to check a harness. You just learn the kind of things that you're going to deal with. And then there's actually a state document pretty much that you take the test and you fill out. I've done the training. I've got a 90% or higher on the test. And then you're certified technically by the state to operate the rides. That's how New Jersey is. New Jersey's one of the stricter states for their theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
But you are like legally allowed to operate. So if something screws up, it technically could come down to you.
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure for um 16 year
But at
old
that
kid.
time, you're not really. You're just like, oh, yeah, I'll sign this. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I
sure,
can
why
operate
not?
the ride now. Cool. Okay.
Just a quick side note to Cash Maniac that just joined the chat. Thanks for the compliment on the setup. Sorry, go on. So yeah,
Uh,
16-year-old kid, you're like, ah, sure, I'll sign whatever you put in front of me. I get to run this
yeah,
roller coaster. I have
I got
the
100% on the
ability to
test.
do
I'm
this.
good.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, so it was fun. I met a lot of friends. One of my good like best friend, he was my best man at the wedding, and I was his. So you meet a
Yeah.
lot of working. You meet a lot of friends, and it's a good time because I really would recommend any high school kids that are looking for a summer job go work there just because it's minimum wage, but it'll get you through what you're doing now, and it's fun. You meet a lot of people, and you
Are
get
there
a
any
free.
like benefits like you get membership, you can like go into the park by yourself
Yeah,
or
you
not
get
by
like a
yourself.
season pass. You get free
You can go
tickets and
for
stuff.
free,
So
you
there
get some free
is,
stuff. There's a
there
few other
is,
perks.
and when I don't know if they still have it, but when I worked, there was a partnership with like it wasn't a part, but there was an agreement. So Great Adventure employees, Donny Park employees, and Hershey Park employees, like you all can go. Like I went to Hershey Park, I went to Donny Park for free with my Six Flags Great Adventure ID card. So they
Hmm.
kind of had like a known like, all right,
Like
we're
a
the
handshake
three
agreement that we're
kind of
the
yeah that those employees like, oh, you'll for working here, you also can go work at that park, even though they're like separate companies. It just was something a local kind of.
Yeah, just like we're going to support each other
Yeah, I don't know if they
sort
still
of
do
thing.
that because it's been
Well,
a
you
while.
worked at Six Flags back in its like heyday when before they did this like revamp, like right when they opened up
Yeah,
Superman was when the park kind of started to decline. I feel like, if my memory serves me correct, and uh like you started seeing like not that many people coming to the park. You started seeing, you could go there and you could literally ride every ride a
yeah,
hundred
the
times and
lines
not
weren't
really.
that bad. But
um
then a couple years later, when they put, they built King Ka and then El Toro, they started that
yeah,
big
they kind of
push.
changed the whole way that the park functioned.
Mhm.
um Now, when did you leave?
I left in '07, after the summer of '07, just because then I was then going into my full-time career type thing. I was going to Brookdale for automotive and be a mechanic. And so I was like, all right, well, this now I'm moved on. This is my kind of, that was my starter job, if you will,
Mhm.
and got me through a couple years. And, I want to go on to my career type thing. So,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Now, was Kingda Ka built by the time you left?
yes. So my last year, I was at King Ka.
So what was that like? Because I remember riding that for the first time and what that was like.
That was a lot of fun. I was mainly at Superman in the previous years. That was one of my favorite rides still to operate, but King of was a lot of fun.
It breaks a lot, though.
It's a very advanced ride. There's so many safety features in it. And like one thing I wish a lot of people would realize, because they don't realize when they do it, but the hand gates that hold you back before you go in
Yeah, like
into your
the
board,
little things that like open
the
up and then
gates,
you
the
can
air
walk through.
gates,
Yeah.
yeah. At King Ka, if you push on it and open it about 2 inches, it shuts the whole ride down, because it thinks a person can enter the track area, and if a train is you can get run over. Like it's just safety
Okay.
feature, and people would push on them, and then it's like, well, now you just shut the ride down,
What
they always
I don't
tell you to
understand, because
stop.
like there's a lot of rides that have them like they're magnetic and you can't, they won't budge once they shut. Is
The
there a
magnetic
reason
ones are
that they?
fine, but because the way it is, so all the gates are hooked together with like a mechanism underneath, and it's just like a pull arm, and it just swings them all open, but they flex a little bit. So
Mhm.
when you flex it enough, it just triggers the
It
one
just
sensor,
opens.
and it just, the gates are open and the train isn't stopped, shut the whole ride down.
That's brutal. So
And
that had to happen a lot.
yeah, it did happen. And you always spiel on the mic, please don't push the hand gates, just stand back, stand behind the yellow line. People always do it, and then the ride breaks down. It's like, well, you just broke the ride. Thanks.
It's like you're the reason that this line is 8 hours long
Yeah.
and that half these people are not going to get on this ride.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's some other issues. I don't know how much I want to go into it, but it just
I'd love
that
to hear it,
ride.
because there's a lot of things that I've noticed from the first year that it was open. They ran 4 trains at a time.
Yeah.
Now they run one or two
Yeah, they
technically.
have the loading. So I
Yeah.
was there when they had the 4 loading stations. That was a lot of fun. One of the reasons because it was after I'd left when they switched over, but I've heard people that still work there, and they because the switch track also would have, like, it would get stuck, and then that would shut the whole ride down. So that was an issue that was causing breakdowns, was that whole switch track mechanism. So
Why
now
don't you
you
explain
eliminate that.
what that means for anybody that hasn't seen the ride?
Okay, so how this ride was set up, there was four, pretty much two stations, and each side of the station had two trains. So you'd have all four trains could park in the main station building.
Mm-hmm.
So there was two separate tracks that two trains would load on. Now, when it would leave the station, if you were on the right side, you'd do a little S turn, and then you'd go on the main track. So there was a switch track that would switch between left and right. So it would
Okay.
be like, if the right side was then able to go to the launch track, that track would be in position, and you would then go out. And then once those trains launched, it would switch over to the left side. So now the track shifts, and then the left side track could go out. So then, you can get trains rolling. Usually in the morning, that train, I don't know, first thing in the morning, that the first hour of that ride usually ran pretty good. Like, there was no problems. But then I guess
Right.
once
Then
the heat of the day and everything got rolling, and
It just
Yeah,
went to shit.
it just
As a side note, Simon Logue in chat said that you remind him of Ben Affleck. So add that to your
okay.
ego for a minute.
I don't see it. I've heard it one other time, and even my wife is like, I don't see it. I'm like, I don't see it either. Like,
I can kind of see it.
uh,
Anyway, so it would run good for the morning, and then
yeah,
as the track would heat up, as things would go
and
on.
it
Um,
usually then kind of was like, this like it just there was so many safety features on it that if one little thing is out of whack, it just shuts the whole ride down. And then you got to go through the code, make sure, all right, that there's not a serious problem. That it's like, oh no, it's just a bird landed on the top of the tower and the sensor triggered.
so
Like
there's a
there's
sensor that can
just
tell if like a bird is 400 feet up and
well,
lands on the top of the
it's just
tower and stuff
there's
like
speed
that.
sensors up there, and if it lands by the sensor, it could cause it to do crazy things.
Hmm. The
Because
other thing too that I don't think a lot of people realize is that the rollback.
yeah, the
Um,
rollback is safely designed to do that. I've been on one rollback.
you've been on one
I've
rollback.
been on one, and it was funny because usually when you have a rollback, it won't make it over because of wind or the weight wasn't right. And then when it rolls back, it slowly comes back, and then they can reset and you launch again. So it's like, yes, you get two
You get
launches for the weight of
two for
one.
one.
Um, but so like I'd worked the day, and then my buddy, we ended shift, and the park was dead. So we're like, dude, let's go hang out in the park, and then we'll come back, ride this. So we get on it, we ride it, like this was during normal hours, and during the launch, I'd want to say it was like 3/4 of the way down the launch, there was like a jerk, like something didn't feel right,
Mm-hmm.
like because I don't know if the way that ride is launched, it's the same technology that's on the aircraft carriers. It's the same
Okay,
catch
so
car, same hydraulic kind of mechanism. So if
oh,
anyone
I
is
didn't know
familiar
that
with that,
actually.
yeah, it's the same exact. There's a catch car, which is like on the aircraft carriers, it hooks up to the wheels on the plane that
Mm-hmm.
launches it. So when the train rolls over, there's a catch dog that drops down on the train, and then because right before you launch, you feel the train kind of lurch back like an inch or two.
Yeah.
That's it making contact with the catch car, and
Okay.
then the brakes drop, and then it releases you, and then at the end you have that nice release off the catch car.
Sure.
So when I rode it with my friend, it was like 3/4 down. We felt the jerk, and like you felt it release early. We're like, all right, it's going up, and we're like, wait a minute, we might not make it. Like this, we're getting excited because we're like, finally a rollback. But we didn't even make it up to like the nose just hit the last stairs. So we just hit that, and we're like, all right, we got a rollback. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right. We should have hit a little bit higher before the rollback. And then it goes back, and then our supervisor came out because he knew we were on the train. So he came out to talk to us because usually they send just the regular attendant out to like, hey, we're going to relaunch you, stand clear. And
Yeah.
he's like, what happened? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, just describe what happened. And I said, hey, it felt a little weird. It jerked. He's like, yeah, we got a ride error. We're probably going to have to evac you. I'm like, okay, then. So we got
So
evac
you're
off.
not actually going to get two rides.
Yeah, we didn't, but I got a rollback. So I was like, all right, at least I got to feel that rollback, but
Yeah.
did not get to get the second launch.
What ended up being the ride error? Like, what did
Something with the catch car, just something, there was a sensor that triggered that either it went too fast or just the littlest thing, but maintenance has to come down, do a full inspection of the launch track, and then they reset, whatever.
And I mean, you could definitely, like, when you get launched in that ride, I've been on it multiple times. You've obviously been on it a bunch. It's an intense, like, you go from 0 to however fast you're going in a very,
128
very,
in 3 seconds.
yeah, it's very fast. Like, if you don't take a breath before you get launched, you're not breathing again until
the
you're
top.
let go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least until you leave that catch car and you start
Mhm.
going up. And then God forbid a bug flies in front of you, then it's, that's never a good thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever been an operator when there was a rollback and had to explain to people, like, don't panic, like nothing's going to happen?
Yeah, because like I said, I worked that ride, so I was launch operator because that's a separate position. So like you have the attendant to checking the train, then you have the launch operator, and he also will control the switch track.
Sure.
Even though the switch track should be automatic, once the two trains go, then it switches to the other side. But sometimes there'd be like a hold up on one side, and we're like, all right, well, this side's ready to go again. We're going to switch the track back over to them so they can continue moving operations.
Right.
But you just feel like everyone remain calm. We're about to, we're give it a second, and we're going to go, and you'll be launching again. Just no need to panic.
Right.
It's a normal thing. It really is.
This happens. How often would you say that happens?
It's a little bit rare. Like the wind's got to be blowing the right way, and it's if you have, I believe if it's a full train goes over first, and then you have like a half empty train, because each time the computer launches a train, it actually can figure out, all right, based on this weight, I need this much energy to launch, like this much pressure to
Sure.
launch you to get you over the top. I believe it's, I'm dyslexic, so now I'm going to get things confused here. But I believe if it's a full train, because you need more energy to launch it over, then the empty train, or do I have it? I might have it backwards now. If it's empty train first, then it puts more pressure into it than the heavy one, and then you can kind of get it to crawl over slow because the algorithm is like, well, I don't need as much pressure to launch.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like
I
either
can't
one
remember now.
could be the reason, because if it's constantly making adjustments, like I
Yeah.
can see it saying like, okay, we need slightly less pressure to
Mm,
launch a full train because that has more momentum once it gets
yeah.
let go. And then if you put a half empty train, you have to launch it a little bit harder to make sure
Yeah.
that it
So
can
that's
carry
what, so then
through.
it'll,
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's constantly like making adjustments
fine
and
tuning it because it
right.
has its set parameters, but it always, because it just sees like, all right, it took the train this long to get to the top, and then it does its calculations like, all right, this is how much weight it had on it, and this is the pressure, and then it kind of goes off of there.
Yeah. So what was the most fun ride that you ever got to run?
Superman was such a good time. We had a good crew up there. It was right on parking lot, so it always had a nice breeze, even in
Mm,
like 100-degree days, and it's just the ride was a lot of fun. It had its little quirks. When I worked there, it broke down a lot because they had a different system to communicate to the train.
right.
Um,
So
but
they changed something out
yeah,
as
so I think it was like in '06 they put, so when the train would pull in, they would use like a radio communication to tell like, all right, unlock this row, like to communicate what rows and everything to unlock. And you'd always lose the radio. It's like, all right, we can't get communication yet. And then you have to just come up and reset something, but maintenance had to come and reset it. Like we couldn't reset that when we lost radio. So then we had to call the ride down and maintenance would come up and do their little reset and then it would work. '06, they changed it. You notice it in the front row. If you look, there's a post with it looks like this camera looking thing. It
mm,
actually shoots a laser beam type thing to the train, and that has a communication wave, if you will,
okay.
and it was more reliable. When I remember when they put that in, I was like, all right, every time you never lost that communication with the train
Yeah.
when it pulled in.
So now what type of like when they every morning what do they do to make sure that do they actually walk the track? Does someone I've heard all these rumors that like someone every morning excuse me, every morning someone will actually physically walk the track to determine like, okay, this is safe and that's safe, and checking everything. Does that actually, like, what do they do every morning?
So
What's the maintenance look
maintenance,
like?
I think I remember correctly, the morning maintenance team got there at 4:30 in the morning, and they were at least working by 5. And I know like it's when I was a Superman, they would walk the lift. They would walk areas that they could because you can't walk every inch of track, especially the
Right.
higher points and stuff. But what they could, they walk, just look over, they lube up some bearings on the motors. The trains, every like no, they didn't get taken apart then. That was winter maintenance, but they inspected, make sure all the locks mechanism were working, everything was tight. Just made sure everything was working on the train for the day.
So
Just
it was
go
more
over
focused on the train and the safety
the
restraints,
trains, the
making sure that
restraints.
no one's going to get like ejected from the ride.
Yeah, and it's tough because they have like so many backup safety systems on that. Like if you ride Superman, on this, when you pull the lap bar down, you'll see there's like holes that were like clicks into.
Yeah.
When you move into, so Superman's a flying coaster. You board it sitting, and then the rows go up, and you're in a flying position. When you roll up, you'll on one of the sides a pin pops out. That's the last resort pin. So if your harness came out, it's just going to hit that pin. So you're never going to have the harness completely open up. It might
Right.
get loose, but it'll hit this pin to stop it. And so there's little mechanisms that if something like the first 3 things fails, you have this last resort that will.
Has anyone ever come back with their harness against that pin that
No,
you know of?
no, not that I know. When I worked there, no, and unless it was a day off. But I, because if that happened, the ride probably be down for that train would be out of service for a while. Like they'd
Right.
probably take the
That
whole
makes
train
sense.
apart and
Figure out what went wrong and
yeah,
all that.
what really went happened then.
Yeah. Um, so you've spent a lot of time around the operational roller coasters.
Hmm.
Then now you're part of a club too, right?
Yes, so it's called ACE, American Coaster Enthusiasts. It's a great club for anyone that, even if you're just, oh, I like to ride the casual roller coaster, it's still a great club to join. Everyone is super friendly and they have sponsored events at parks, which are fun. But it's a great little organization that you just get to hang out with people that enjoy theme parks and roller coasters and life pretty much. Everyone's real happy.
So what do they do? Like I went to one of the events with you last
Hmm.
year. Um, but like what kind of benefits do you get from being a part of this club?
So as me as a member, one, I get access to these events. I get special discounts on other park tickets. Like if I don't have a season pass, like there's a certain website I go on through Ace, and it's like, all right, I can get discounted Disney tickets. Any park you could think of, you have discounts. Even the boardwalk stuff, it's like, oh, here, use this code and get 50% off the tickets for the
Oh,
roller
that's kind
coaster
of
at this
cool.
boardwalk. So there's also enterprise discount for rental cars. There's a hotel thing you can get discounts. So they have other stuff. There is like a monthly magazine type thing that comes out that just says, hey, this is building or this opened up. Here's the review and here's photos of it. Um, so they do a lot that's, I think it's worth it. It's fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what parks have you been to around the
I've
country, around the world?
I've haven't been outside the U.S. I eventually want to. Just haven't been there yet. I'm hoping next year to get to a Canada park. I'm hoping. But I can go down the whole list. I've been to Hershey Park. I've been to Dorney Park, Knoebels. Those are in Pennsylvania. Been up in Massachusetts, Six Flags New England. Been to Six Flags America in Washington, D.C. I've been to Kings Dominion in Virginia. Been to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Carowinds in North Carolina, South Carolina border. Six Flags Over Georgia. Um, been to Cedar Point, Kings Island. Those are in Ohio. Been to Kentucky Kingdom in Kentucky. Been to Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri, which that is a fantastic park. Middle of nowhere, but if you can get out there, go to Branson. One, the town's fun, but
So is
that
that like your
park
favorite
is
park?
so it's number 3 on my list of top
All right.
parks.
So
Um,
what's the number one?
so number 1 for me has more personal like ties to it. Like if I didn't have the personal tie, I'd probably be a little bit lower. But because I've had so many great memories and like experiences there,
Mm.
is Hershey Park. Just because when me and my wife we first started dating, one of our first getaways, like 6 months in, we had a weekend to Hershey, and we had such a good time. And I still remember one thing because I was like, oh, I love roller coasters, and I go for rope drop, and I was telling her, I was like, yeah, you want to run to like the new coaster that they built, and like thinking she's like, nah, she's like,
Wait,
no,
what's
let's do
rope
it.
drop?
So like when you go for open, like
Hmm.
right at open at like if the park opens at 10, they'll let you in at 9, like 45, and there's usually like a rope that they have everyone penned back through after you go through,
Oh, okay, I get
and
it.
then they drop the rope, and it's just a mass. Everyone runs out into the park and runs to their coat, whatever ride they want to go to first.
Right.
And she was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And I was like, "Really? You're agreeing?" Like, okay.
Sure.
I didn't think she would go for it, but she did, and we just had such a great time. And later on, end up getting engaged at the park, and then we've had family go with family, and it's just so many great memories there. And it's like got a great ride collection, the atmosphere of the park. You got the chocolate there. It's a really fun little
I mean,
park.
who doesn't love chocolate?
Yeah. So that I put that number 1 just because of all the good memories. But they do have a solid coaster collection there.
Okay. So of the coasters there, what's your favorite
I gotta go
and why?
Storm Runner probably. Storm Runner, so it has the same launch as Kingda, the hydraulic launch,
Okay.
but it's not as tall. It's it's under like it's 178 feet. I can't remember off the top of my head. But you go over a little top hat, and then you have like a couple loops. There's inversions in it, so you go upside down. You get a little pop of air time. It's a longer coaster, so you get this nice launch, and you get some other elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot of fun.
Okay. What else does that park have? You said that they've got a pretty good collection of coasters.
Yeah.
Like
So then they
what?
have Fahrenheit, which is a coaster. You have you go straight up the lift hill, and then it has a 97-degree drop. So you come in and then go, and it has some loops and stuff, and it's a fun coaster. They have some nice wooden coasters there. That Lightning Racer, which is a dueling little wooden coaster, which is a lot of fun. They have Sky Rush, which is an airtime machine, but the way the lap bar kind of sits, it's on your thighs, and it's not always the most comfortable, but it is a really good ride though. It throws you out of your seat. But
do you ever get like as you're going through all these, do you ever get like a headache from any of the like getting thrown around or anything like that? Because I remember there was a ride at Six Flags that's not there anymore that everybody used to complain about, Viper.
Yeah,
That
Viper,
everybody
yeah,
would just
around.
complain that their head would get like banged back and forth, and nobody rode it. Have you ever been on any like that are like consistently terrible?
So I haven't gotten knock on wood. I haven't gotten any headaches or gotten sick on any rides or anything. There is a couple rides that I'm like, wow, this is rough.
Right.
I think it was before Sandy hit when I went on the cyclone in New York. I was like, this is a bit rough.
That was at
the Coney Island.
Coney Island, yeah.
There's another. In Carowinds, there's a couple steel coasters that beat you up. They're older coasters. But like it's like I'm not just gonna ride it over and over. I'm like, all right, ride it once or twice, it's fun, but I'm not gonna sit there and keep riding it all day long.
Mm-hmm. So what coasters have you been on that either no longer exist or are unique to their type of, like for example, King Ka is pretty unique in that it just launches you off, and you've got, it's quick, like it's both quick in the fact that you're going 100 and change, and the fact that the ride's over in like 45 seconds. But there's a lot of different types of coasters out there that, like for example, Joker, stuff like that. I've only been on coasters in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I can only speak. That. Yeah. So what's the most unique coaster that you've been on?
So I gotta say there's two I can think of offhand that are very unique. So one, in King's Dominion, they used to have one called Hypersonic XL 2000. So it was a launch coaster, but it used air compression. So the launch actually is, you thought King Ka was quick. This is like 1 point some odd seconds. Like it throws you in your seat. It's just, this launch is just, it's like being shot out of a gun. And that ride, I got to ride it once, and it was insane. It just was like, pow. You went straight up the tower, over, and then a couple bank turns, it was over. And it was like, that launch was unreal. It's no longer here. And the only type, they built a newer model actually last year at Six Flags Great America in Chicago. But that's the newer model. If you want like to actually ride one that was pretty much similar to that, you got to go to Japan. Has still has
is there a
the
reason
original.
that it doesn't exist anymore? Or is it because it was like too intense?
So what I heard was the maintenance. It went through parts a lot, and that one actually used car tires. Like they had car tires. Yeah, they tried to make it smooth. It was like an iBox looking track, so it wasn't like tubular. It was like iBox, and it had like car tires and suspension. It just, from what I heard, is it went through a lot of parts, and it just became a maintenance nightmare.
Interesting. So speaking of maintenance nightmares, what went wrong with Batman and Robin?
I do know. I'll try and tell you. I don't know. I don't want to all of a sudden get a call and be like, oh, you're not having a season pass anymore.
Well, I mean, you don't work there, so.
Yeah, I don't know. So because I actually saw photos of it the day it had its one accident. It was one of the wheel bogies. I think it was the middle car. Had a crack in it, and the wheel bogie is what holds the three wheels around the track. So you have road wheel, a side wheel, and the upstop wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And the wheel bogey is the piece of metal that these wheels bolt to.
Yeah.
There's, I guess, a hairline fracture in it that must have happened during the day. And when it launched, and you know when it had like the barrel rolls at the
Yeah.
top before the spike, during that, because those barrel rolls put a lot of force on it, it just cracked it, and the wheel that just fell apart. So it lost the wheel. Pretty much, it lost
Oh,
its wheels. But
the wheels came off.
because it's still connected to the train, so it's still like it's not going to go anywhere really. It's just now scraping the track,
Yeah.
and so it went a little crooked, like it just went awkward through it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it went up to the spike, there was launch motors that were supposed to push the train back so it had enough momentum to get through the other
Right.
loops to get back to the station. Oh, it destroyed them. Because I remember, well, one, I had someone that was working over there, and he sent me photos of what the train looked like. And then when I was coming back from my shift, I remember seeing, oh, there's one of the launch fins stuck in a motor. The one motor's like broken off, like,
Oh.
but then, you know, it went backwards through it, kind of crooked, and then it saddled, where it then kind of just sat there and the evac. I think the worst injury though was like a broken ankle. So it wasn't that bad of like what, because there's people on it when it happened.
Well, yeah, but like we've seen like Batman the Ride got stuck quite a bit for a while, and they didn't eliminate that ride. Like what went wrong that like made it so that they not only they removed the ride eventually, but they stopped launching both at the same time. They
Well,
stopped
the
like
launch,
there
that
was a
was way
lot
before
of
that. The launch. So when the launch, the ride had two main capacitors, so you can launch each at the same time. One blew for whatever reason, and I guess I don't know how much a new capacitor is of that size.
Mhm.
And apparently, Great Adventure was like, no, we're not investing the money. We're going to run the ride with one capacitor. So then when they went to launch both trains at the same time, it took out all of Jackson, the whole power grid. And then after that, and they realized that, Jackson was like, well, if you ever do that again, we're going to fine you this X amount, you know, this whatever, because, you know, either get a new capacitor or just don't launch them. They don't race anymore, which then they never raced again.
Hang on,
because then it took out the whole grid.
Yeah, no, I don't blame. Hang on for 1 second. I just got to update something. Woodolph, thank you for the typo correction. And yeah, I don't know what's up with the 4 followers. I appreciate you following. So that's getting us further. Give me 1 second.
I feel like I need the spiel right now.
What's that?
I feel like I need the spiel because I remember everything from when I used to work there. Like, at this time, we're experiencing minor technical difficulties. We do not know how long it's going to be. You're welcome to wait. Otherwise, you must exit out the way you came in. Thank you.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that. Yeah. All right, that should update momentarily. Anyway, so back to what we were talking about. So what caused the capacitor to go out?
Nobody knows. They just one went and then they never replaced it. So then it ran on one capacitor and then they couldn't launch them at the same time.
Huh.
And then so back to when it had its little accident, the next year when they went to reopen it, you noticed they then took out the barrel rolls and put S turns in.
Yeah, I did notice that.
That was because the barrel rolls supposedly had too much G-force and were causing the wheel that would have caused.
That's what caused the crack.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And they had that for about a month. It ran like that, and then during a morning inspection, they saw hairline fractures again, and then the state just came in and was like, "Nope, you can't run this ride."
So I forget if you just mentioned this, but has anyone once that capacitor broke and they basically it would take out the power grid. How often did anybody actually? I'm drawing a blank.
On accident?
Yeah, did it on accident? Quote unquote.
No, there was. I remember when I worked there once that it did happen on accident that they accidentally launched, which I don't understand because how that operator booth is, you have the two, you're literally like sitting next to the other operator. Like you're focusing on, let's say, Batman side, you're focusing on Robin side, and you're supposed to be like, I'm launching. No, like you're supposed to like communicate there
Instead, they're
before
like,
you do
we're
it.
launching right now
Yeah, like that,
together.
like you gotta figure that out. So I don't know how it accidentally happened. But I
Right.
know there was one time it did, and then I know I'm sure they got fined because Jackson said they were going to fine them because it takes out the grid.
That so how long? What is it actually blowing the grid? Like I
I
feel
don't
like,
know. I just know that they say half of Jackson loses power when they would do
huh?
that.
That's a shame that ride's not there anymore.
Yeah, and supposedly after they found that, the state was like, "We're not certifying. You got to get rid of the ride." So there was the state that said you're never going to be able to run the ride. They apparently sold it to a park in Mexico. It all got shipped down there, but then Mexico, they never built the ride. It just is standing in a field.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, so
So you've been on a bunch that don't exist anymore. We
yeah,
started talking about that
so
for a
that one.
second.
Um,
That one.
yeah, and there's another one that was very unique. And this goes to in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. They had a park called Hard Rock Park. It opened for a year, and then through bankruptcy, another tried to open it for the following year, and that was Freestyle Music Park. But one of the coasters there, it almost was like the car you got in was like a Wild Mouse car, like four people in it, but it
Mhm.
had the lift hill was a Ferris wheel. So you'd leave the station, and the car where you'd usually sit was a piece of track on like a rotating thing. So
Right.
you'd get in that, and then the whole wheel would move, and you'd rotate to the top of the wheel where it would line up with another the drop, and then when it lined up with that, it would stop, and then you would roll onto the track, go down the drop, and go through the course.
Yeah.
It was very unique that I was like, oh wow, this is like two rides in one. You're on a roller coaster, but hang
And a
on, we got
Ferris
your little
wheel.
Ferris wheel, and then, but it's no longer there. But it was unique. It was a fun little ride. It wasn't the most thrilling thing, but it was different.
Sure.
It was fun.
That's kind of cool. So what happened to the park?
So after the first year, it went bankrupt, and another company bought it in bankruptcy court because that park they spent so much money. Like it was really nicely themed. It was hard rock music was it was designed to that. So the big coaster there was like Led Zeppelin the ride. You had Led Zeppelin music playing when you're going through it, and it was a lot of fun. They had another dark ride that was to white Nights in White Satin.
Hmm.
So it was like a little trippy in there. You had 3D glasses, and it was like going through is really well themed and to that song playing. And then at one point, it's like the trip turns, and you see all these evil eyes. Like it was really cool experience. And they
Nice.
just had different sections of the park where like they had a British invasion area, they had a country music kind of area, and with like some country ride, and they had Eagles Life in the Fast Lane like little ride with that playing while you're riding it. It was really
Yeah.
cool. It's just they really put a lot of money into it and just thought they can outdo Disney as attendance wise, and that's not going to happen for a starter park like that's. So they end up going bankrupt. Another company buys it, and they had to retheme everything, and they opened it for the second year, and I got to go to that, and they had to repaint and change the names of the rides, and it was a fun park, but they tried
They
to do
just
too
didn't do
much.
it
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So for a second, there's someone in chat asking, uh, are you into just physical roller coasters? And I already know the answer to this, but or do you also enjoy Roller Coaster Tycoon?
I could play Roller Coaster Tycoon for like I'll start now and it'll be 2 a.m. and be like crap. No, yeah, I really can't play that game anymore because it literally just that'll be my whole day. That's it.
Yeah.
No, but
Well, I mean,
I'm into that, and when I was younger, I used to build a lot of Connects and Lego coasters. So not just riding rides, it was the digital games and Legos and stuff, building rides out of that.
yeah. So what about the game? Now I'm kind of curious because I play a lot of video games. I play
Hmm.
different video games than that. Like I'm terrible at these like sandbox build your own civilization type games. Um, but what about being able to build the park and play roller? What about Roller Coaster Tycoon is will occupy your day for, you know, your whole day.
Mhm. Well, like it depends. So if I'm doing the mission, I'm just trying to get the mission done. But like I like the sandbox mode because then I'm like, all right, I have a blank land. I can design. Oh, I'm gonna design my entryway, and then I also theme my rides. Like I'll try and all right, put this ride in and name it, and then like all right, we're gonna put trees, buildings, and like try and like make it like if you look at it, it almost would look more realistic. Like I try and make it look realistic, and that just
Mhm.
takes a lot of time trying to build the buildings and let me set up this way and make the track interact with like I'll build a mountain and like oh I'll make this whatever dragon mountain and make it interact with the mountain and this and that.
Yeah.
It just that takes a lot of time and the next thing you know it's 2 a.m. and I'm like oh crap.
Your wife's walking in like, have you gotten up to eat
Yeah.
today?
Have you eaten? Do you have water? Like are you all right?
Well, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I also, like when I sit down to play, it'll literally, I'll play, granted, I play at night a lot. So I'll be the guy that plays from, you know, 9 o'clock at night until 4 in the morning. But it's like you blink and all of a sudden it's, you're sitting there and you're like, oh God. And then you look at the time, it's like, holy shit, the sun's gonna be coming up in a bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I could totally get that. Um, all right, so back to the physical parks. What about roller coasters? Like, I mean, most people like roller coasters as long as you're
Hmm.
not afraid of heights and stuff. But like, what about them really has this like passion for you?
It's just such a thrill. Like there's no other place where I can strap into something and then either get tossed around on the ride or like feel like I'm flying or just it's this adrenaline rush that you really can't get anywhere else and in like a safe environment. Like yeah, you probably could go skydiving, but that's a little bit more pricey than, and that's only one time. I could buy a season pass and go ride the ride how many times a summer and get that same rush probably and it's just such a thrill like being strapped into that and
You don't think the fact that it's like super safe and like all that takes away from the thrill at all?
I not really. I don't really like I know they're safe, but I don't like, oh, I'm safe, I'm not gonna die. Like there's some rides where like you're getting thrown out of there. Like, good thing there's a mechanism because like
Yeah,
there's
I mean
some
that is fair. Although I think some of the rides that like I enjoyed the most when I was younger were the ones that like you could almost like skirt the harness, like Rolling Thunder when it was there.
oh well they,
You
they just
could,
had the buzz bar as it's called.
yeah, and you could just kind of like, and you felt like you were getting thrown out of the
Oh
seat, and
yeah.
I'm like, it's almost like you're flirting with death
Mhm.
as you're like going through everything.
Yeah, no, like one of the top it's my number two, but everyone else says it's probably the best coaster is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point.
Mm.
This ride, it was built um, last year, and it's unreal. You are literally out of your seat more than you're in it. It's just there's so much ejector airtime on it. And at one point in the ride, you're like a 90-degree bank turn, and it's somehow getting ejector air, like your sideways air. It's like you really feel like you're about to fly out of that thing.
Yeah,
It's just one of the top coasters in the world.
that say, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Someone was leaving my house, and I turned for a second. What was the name of it one more time? I'm
Steel
sorry.
Vengeance at Cedar
Steel
Point
Vengeance.
in Sandusky, Ohio, which that's like my number two favorite park. That park is just coasters pretty much. Like
Yeah.
it's right on it's a peninsula out in one of the Great Lakes.
Mhm.
It's a nice park, but they specialize in coasters. It
Yeah.
is you look the drive in because you can see the peninsula out there and driving in, and it's just steel. Just the
Yeah.
whole skyline is steel.
That's pretty cool. Rudolph, I actually do have a podcast. I can send you the link for it if you're interested. I've got some pretty interesting episodes on Spotify. If you look for Raviolis and Naps is the name of it. So Cedar Point's I've never been there. That's always been one of my, like, I really want to get out to see it because they consider themselves like the roller coaster capital of the
Mm-hmm.
world because they've got like 20 roller coasters. Um, why is that your number two?
Well, because Hershey Park, I have such a good. There's like
Oh, that's right. You
more.
did mention that.
Yeah, that's why. And then number two, that's because the coaster collection. They have
Yeah.
they have Steel Vengeance. Then they have Maverick, which it doesn't look like much. It's only like 100 feet tall, but this thing packs such a punch, and it's got a beyond 90-degree drop, these bank low turns, so your quick turns, you got the G-forces, you have a little pop of air, you have the inversions. Then there's, spoiler alert, underneath, you think you're coming in the brake run, but it's not. It's a launch. So then you get a like 70-mile-an-hour launch into the back half of the coaster, and it's such a good ride.
That's pretty cool. They also have Top Thrill Dragster too.
Top Thrill Dragster,
which was
the original before.
Yeah, that was the. Well, actually, was it the original? Because I think there was
at the height. So Knott's Berry Farm out in California. I've been there. That's a really fun park. They have a good mix of rides and coasters and experiences. Mm-hmm. But that, I believe, was the first accelerator, the first coaster to use that launch system.
Right. Isn't there one? I feel like there's one in the Middle East that was first to. Maybe it's the Ferrari roller coaster or something like that.
But that was built after King Ka. But that is the fastest coaster. That took the title of fastest.
Oh, okay.
It's in Dubai.
Yeah.
Formula Rossa.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. For some reason, I thought that was before Top Thrill Dragster.
No, that was after King Ka, which King Ka was built after Top Thrill. Which I actually like Top Thrill better because the launch track is shorter, so you're getting up to speed. It feels like in a quicker time, and it's only a lap bar. As you know, King Ka has the oh yeah, so now you're going this fast, you're going over, and it's the same layout as King Ka minus the hill at the end.
Huh.
And you have just a lap bar. So it's like I like it better than King Ka. If I compare them to Top Thrill, I enjoy it.
Interesting. I feel like too with King Ka, you don't really need the over the shoulder harness.
You don't. Again, New Jersey is very strict. They have some. I think if it's 300 feet or taller, you have to have an over the restraint harness on it.
Just because of the height of the ride.
This is New Jersey, just because they got to add something.
Just because it's New Jersey.
Yeah.
As if we don't have enough marks against us as far as regulations.
Like I understand they have a lot of safety stuff, but I'm like, this one really isn't. You don't really need. You could be safe with a lap bar.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot that I feel like realistically when you're strapped into that thing and it's like you almost can't breathe because it's so tight around your waist that like. Actually, wait a minute. I guess it would just be the height requirement because I remember with Batman and Robin, you didn't have it started as over the shoulder.
It did.
And then they moved to like
the lap bar.
The lap bar that also locked in your feet.
Yeah, it had like an ankle bar on it.
Like it was like a roller that went over your feet to hold you in. How did they get around? So is the requirement for like a shoulder harness just because of the height? Or is it something to do
in New Jersey, any ride over 300 feet has to have that. The other way, it's just what the manufacturer. So I believe the overhead, it just too many people were banging and they're coming off with headaches. Mm-hmm. So you can have the lap bar. It's safe. It's just now like you have room to kind of move around that you're not just slamming your head into, the headrest.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Also, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Now, with roller coasters that don't exist anymore, what's the reason that they end up that they go out of service or things like that? Like you would think that the older the ride, the more historical value that it would have, and that they would want to preserve being able to say like, hey, we've had this ride for 30 years, 25 years, whatever the case may be. What do they do with it? Well, number one, why do they go out of service? And then what do they do with them when they do?
A lot of them just get scrapped. Like the metal coasters just get scrapped. Right. But from what I've heard, because obviously I'm not actually there when they make this decision to end the coaster, and rarely does that leak out of the official reason why, but it's usually a maintenance item. Like if it's so old, and like some of those companies, like back in the 90s, there was a company, Aerodynamics, which was, they built Scream Machine, they built Big Bad Wolf down in Busch Gardens, which that's no longer there. Like that company went out of business. So now it's tougher to get replacement parts for some of these rides when the company doesn't even exist. There is other manufacturers that like hey, we'll send us the part, we'll try and replicate it with our
Right.
our machines and for this much money, but maybe it's still too pricey for the park. And like if a ride is like, all right, it's a maintenance nightmare, but no one ever rides it, it's like, why are we going to put all this money into a ride that doesn't have the popularity when we can like scrap it following year? Let's plan a new coaster that people are going to like, line up for days for.
Hmm.
Um,
So when they, first of all, Papa Nugget, thank you for the follow. When they do that, so they just they scrap the ride, number one, but there's also a lot of like relocating rides. How do you, like, for example, a wooden roller coaster that looks like it's just kind of like, screwed together with planks of wood. I mean, it technically is, but
it is.
how do you? Yeah, I said that and I was like, oh wow, I sound like an ass. Um, how do you make sure that all the parts end up in the same place? Like, I get with a steel coaster,
Steel coaster's
there's
easier.
it's easier, but like you think about a wooden roller coaster, like El Toro in Six Flags, and it's like, okay, if they were to relocate that ride, there are hundreds of thousands of planks of wood and screws and nails and all that that needs to be relocated. How do they make sure it ends up in the same place, or do they just rebuild the ride
So,
out
well,
of fresh wood somewhere else?
El Toro actually is a different. I'll have to explain what El Toro is because it's not a typical wooden coaster.
Okay, let's start
But
there.
so okay, let's start there. So
Actually, you know what? No, I asked the first question. Let's continue on.
let's continue that.
Sorry,
So
my ADD is
yeah,
getting the
no,
better
I'll
of me.
definitely explain before this is over. So like I'm pretty sure if they're moving a wooden coaster, it just gets because that gets built on site. They just get fresh lumber and they rebuild it. I don't think they take them apart and move them. The
Hmm.
steel coasters they do. So example of this is not. Some people know, a lot of people probably don't. But Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure actually came from when Six Flags owned Kentucky Kingdom. When they closed, they said, all right, we're shutting this park down. They
That's the
pulled the ride
standing
out.
coaster, right?
That's a stand up coaster. I think it was built in 98 or 97 is when that ride was built. And then I think it was '08 or '09. I forgot when Six Flags sold or they got rid of Kentucky Kingdom. They pulled rides from Kentucky Kingdom and put them in other parks. So when Great Adventure opens up, Green Lantern, they repainted and renamed it. It's
Hmm.
still not the smoothest ride, and everyone's like, "Why is this rough?" And it's like, well, this was Chang at Kentucky Kingdom. It was built in like '98. It's an older ride. It's not going to be smooth, but you can relocate them. And if you actually look, so the lift tail part and the drop, which is in the parking lot,
Yeah.
if you look how tall those footers are, like they're like 6 foot, 7 foot tall footers. Like a normal footer only sticks a couple feet out of the ground. That's because the land where Chang sat was like it had elevation. So they would have been normal looking, but because they put it in a flat spot, they had to like
They
adjust the
had to
footer
actually
height.
adjust the landscape to fit the
Yeah.
ride
And they're like, well, we're
where
not
it
going to
needs
just
to
throw
be.
dirt in the parking lot. We'll just make the footer a little bit taller.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I mean,
And
yeah, like I get when you relocate the steel coaster, those
yeah,
are like super. I'm not gonna say they're super easy to relocate, but
no,
it
but
makes sense. But I
everything,
guess it
track
makes sense
pieces are
that they would.
numbered.
Yeah, I guess it would also make sense that when they're relocating a wooden one, if it gets relocated, they would just basically get fresh lumber and start from scratch
Yeah,
again.
because they're built on site. They just order the lumber and they have the plans like, all right, we're going to build the A-frame like this. And then the track is all like 6 pieces of regular lumber. And it's an art really to build a wooden coaster. Just how I follow constructions and watching how they do it. It's just like, wow, they stack the wood and measure out. All right, this is the track length. Because like the steel ones are done by computers now. Like, all right,
Yeah.
the track width is this. This is get welds here. Boom, and the machine welds it up and bends it to the correct, arc.
Hmm.
A wooden coaster, you have the guy like, all right, well, I laid this lumber to turn like here, so now this one has to follow the radius to make it smooth. Like, that's an art really to get
So
that
they're
wood.
really it's like building I guess the best analogy would be like building a bridge from opposite sides and hoping that everything connects in the middle.
Yeah,
Um, and they manage to make it work.
and they make it work and smooth enough that it's like not like completely
Yeah.
jerking around. Like that
Yeah.
that really is an art to the companies that make wooden coasters because that's not done like it's not pre-done in a warehouse. That's built on site.
So now you mentioned El Toro's not a typical
Yes.
wooden roller coaster.
So El Toro is called a prefab. So if you ever actually look at it, you'll be able to see it now. So there's actually sections of wooden track that is like, let's say 10 to 16 feet long,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an interlock in between them. So that whole track was designed and built in a factory, the track layout, and they kind of like pre-cut some of the wooden, the A-frames. So then it gets to the work site, and they just, all right, this number, and they line it up, and just follow the plans, and then all right, this is track side right that goes here, and they interlock together and they get bolted together, and
So it's kind of like a combination of the way that the steel is
yeah,
built and a wooden roller coaster, because obviously they still have to assemble the frame,
yeah.
but the track
Um,
itself is
the
kind of
track
like,
it's a prefab track. So the positives of that, let's say, because over time, wooden coasters will have to get retracked because of stress and warpage, and as lumber gets old, it has
yeah, it's going
different
to rot
properties.
and stuff like that.
So
It's definitely
now,
going to wear out sooner.
yeah, so Six Flags will be like, hey, we need track number 72, the right side, because that one it doesn't fit our inspection. So they can order that track piece, they can remill it, and then send it out and swap it in because
Hmm.
it's this prefabbed track.
Do you have any idea how long the lumber on a wooden roller coaster would last?
I don't know. It should last a couple of years. It really depends on how forceful the coaster is. So this past year, my wife and I drove. We did a little trip to Kentucky and Indiana, which there's a really fun park called Holiday World in Indiana, in
Mm-hmm.
Santa Claus, Indiana. So the whole town is like Santa Claus and Christmas themed. The theme park there's a Halloween area, there's Independence area, and there's Thanksgiving, which has this wooden coaster, which it's the best wooden coaster that I've ever ridden, the Voyage.
Why
And
is it the best?
it's long, it's fast, and it has this. So you have the good little. You don't have quite the ejector air of El Toro,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well,
like
that El Toro is an intense ride.
yeah. So you still get out of your seat, and then the back turns. It's like you have 90-degree banking because it's just you're taking at such a speed, and then you come on your way back now because you go all the way back and you're coming back, and you have this little double down, which it goes down and then down again, and it's like such a fun element, and it just the speed you have through this thing, it's a lot of fun. And I'm like this, it's longer than El Toro. It hauls.
Yeah.
We had even my wife she was like impressed, and that's she's not the enthusiast. Like she'll go with me to these parks
It's
and
like, all right, I guess if I got to go to
she'll
this
like
thing,
ride it, and like usually like Holiday World was one of those parks that's like there's more things to do than just coasters. There's like, oh, there's fun foods they have. Everything they have Santa Claus walking around the park you can meet. Like they have rides that are scary. Like
I
they're
feel like this is almost out of like a Nightmare Before Christmas, how they've got like the different worlds.
kind of, yeah. And then they have Independence and you have blue ice cream, and so that was always one because it's more fun. It's not just that we're getting the whole experience out of it. So she came out with me and she was like, I'm impressed with it. Like she was impressed with it. So it's good when she says she's impressed.
Yeah. She decided that this is enough that I'm actually going to speak up about it.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that that's a good ride. And like I thought El Toro was always the best wooden coaster I've been on. The Voyage took it. It was like, nope, Voyage got that title.
Yeah. Now,
And well, backward, I know I got sidetracked. So
no,
every year, Holiday World almost has to retrack sections of that ride almost because there's so many G forces on that ride. The wood it wears down quick.
so almost every year
It's like every 2 years. This past winter, they replaced a lot of section of track with new lumber just because that ride has so many G forces in the back end. It wears the track down.
yeah.
So that's where I was going with that. That if it's a more intense ride, they're going to have to replace the wood sooner than they would on a less intense wooden coaster.
So now with El Toro, it makes sense that like the track is prefab. They can order certain sections.
Mm-hmm.
How do they replace sections of track with a ride like that, where it was basically built on site and the original engineer is not there anymore or anything like that? What do they do to fix it?
So it's their maintenance. They have a carpenter team that has been working with that ride for so long. They know it, and that is one of the best, I guess, carpenter teams they have, because they that ride is always running good, and they have the blueprints. So it's like, all right, we have the blueprints. We know, if we're gonna cut the track like this, and then we're gonna rebuild this section and make it line up, and get it to the spec of what the blueprint says.
Mm.
So then every park always has that master copy of the blueprint. So with the wooden coasters, they have like, all right, we know what we have to do if we have to fix this part of the ride.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Now, Six Flags is building a new ride
Yes.
this year. Seems that from what I've seen, it seems pretty unique.
It is. This is so the company that built it or is building it, it's called Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC. They started out in the early, I want to say like 2011. They've hit the kind of industry and taken them by storm. They also built Still Vengeance. They've built some other big rides that have been like the number one rides at the parks that they've built.
Mm-hmm.
But they recently came out with this concept, which is what Jersey Devil is going to be. It's called the single rail coaster. So the track is only 15 inches wide, and the car you sit on, your legs are straddling the track. Like your feet are actually on the sides. So they have the first generation. I got to ride right before the whole COVID hit in Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, Wonder Woman Golden Lasso coaster. So that was their first generation of this. So I'm excited. I'm like, all right, I got to ride the generation 1. Now I'm going to be able to ride generation 2 when it opens up at Great Adventure. But you literally, your feet are straddling the track like you're on a pedal. So you can't see the track, but you can tell, like, yeah, the track is in between my legs. And it just, being only single file, like it's only one person per seat, the turns are tighter. And it just whips, it hauls. Like if you watch a video of this thing, it just has so much speed, and like you're having ejector air, you're whipping around, and it's like, it's over before you know it. And it just, it's an intense ride. It really is. So that's what, interesting to see how intense, this one's going to be, because knowing what the generation 1 coaster is.
So with something like that, like you said you were on like a pedal?
Well, like it's, I don't know, like a platform. Your feet just sit, like you can't touch the track, but like the track is going in between. Like there's a shield in between you and the track.
Okay, that makes sense.
Pedal was probably a bad choice of words.
Well, I mean, either way, it's an interesting concept, because usually you're used to being like very closed in, and everything kind of happening around you. Do you think that's going to like deter a lot of people from riding it, because it's so? I mean, it's obviously, it's going to. On one hand, I feel like it's going to attract a certain group of people that are super enthusiasts. Like I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I'll definitely try it.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that's got to be a risk for a park to create something that's that intense, right?
I don't think so, because there's Wonder Woman 1 down in Fiesta, Texas, which I got lucky because of kind of COVID was just starting, so the park was kind of empty, because even though it was their spring break in Texas, I guess people were just starting to be like, oh, I don't know if I should go out type thing, because the following weekend the whole world shut down. So I got to ride it like 5 times. So I got lucky to kind of get some rides on it, because they say that it can get like, hour, 2-hour wait for it. Because that's the other thing, being single file, that only has 8 cars per train. Granted, the station is always moving. So like when the train
what
comes in.
What do you mean the station is always moving?
The trains are always like, they never stop. So when it pulls in, the first row seat opens up, that person gets out, then you board that row, and then when it gets to where the loading like gate is, the second row pops open, that person gets out, you jump in the seat, all while it's slowly like crawling through the station. So it's always
that's so interesting.
And that's what they said Great Adventure is going to be. But Great Adventure has 12-person trains, because it's a bigger scale of a ride than what the one in Texas is.
So how do they do like safety checks and stuff like that? Like the trains constantly.
They're probably be in good shape. You're always walking, just all right, that check, all right.
So why
Obviously,
is
they can stop it if they're like, oh, we
yeah,
can't dispatch it. But
sure, but was that basically done so that if it's a single file, obviously the capacity of the
yeah,
train's limited.
that's what I think.
So they just to keep the ride always moving. It's like, oh, you gotta be on your feet,
Mm.
like keep it going, so that they can actually keep the capacity up. Because
Mm.
one of the, I mean, the longest I've waited a long time for roller coasters, and nothing like kills the experience more than spending your entire day
Yeah,
online.
I'd probably have you beat the one time the longest I've waited for a ride.
How long have you waited?
3.5 hours.
3.5. Is that how long you said?
Yep.
I've waited longer
For what?
for King Ka.
See,
The
that was
week
one of the positives when I was an employee there. So all the rides before you open for the day, before a guest steps on, an employee has to ride it. So when I worked King every morning I got to ride it. So it's
you
like,
got to
all
be the
right.
one that had all the fun.
Well, also technically, so it is interesting. So like riding it every day, you pick up on sounds on what the ride should make. So you almost can like, wait a minute, something doesn't sound right. Can you just take a look at this? And then maintenance would. And I know Scream Machine. When I worked at Scream Machine, it would make the road wheels when they would go bad and need a new wheel put on it. It would make this screeching noise. It would feel weird, like you could tell. So
Something
you'd
was
riding it
up.
in the morning and you'd be like, oh, row 5, you got to check those wheels. And then they'd take it off and be like, yeah, I replaced the wheel. And then they put it on when they were done. So like that's why really the employees ride it in the morning. You're supposed to be checking and listening to make sure everything sounds normal before they put a
And you
guest
can
on it.
you can pinpoint just by the way it sounds, like what row and
Well,
where.
if you'd be like, it's a couple rows behind me, like depending on where you
Right.
sit. You might not be able to be like, no, it's row 5, wheel 2, left side. Like you're not going to be
Well,
that
no, I didn't
accurate,
think
but
that
like,
you'd be that good, but like being
but
able to say like, it sounds like it's in row 5.
yeah, or something. I was like 2 rows behind me. Just check it out.
Yeah. So yeah, when King Ka first opened, I waited for 6.5 hours
Wow.
the second time I
Yeah.
was on it. And at that point, it was like I was with my girlfriend at the time. I was in high school, and we finally get up to the gate, and we're like next to be on. And her mother was there to pick us up, and she's like, "I've been waiting for 45 minutes. You guys got to get your asses out here." And I'm like, "Fuck that! We've waited so long. We have to ride this ride at this point. It has to happen. I'll take all the shit that your mother's going to give us from here on out, but like." We have to get on this ride because like we
You're
waited for
there.
we're there. We're right there. We have to get on it at this point. And of course, like we sat in the station. We were talking about the split track earlier. We sat in the station for another 20 minutes because they were having a problem with the split track. And they couldn't launch my side of the station. Ironically enough, it's the side of the station that they no longer use.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was like, we have to ride it at this point. I am not going to have waited 6 hours, done nothing else in the park, and not get to ride this ride.
Yeah.
Unless they shut it down right now, I am
And say I
getting on
can't.
this ride. I'll find another ride home.
I'll just start walking. That's
Yeah, I'll start walking. Like, you go do what you got to do, but I'm getting on this ride. It's going to happen.
I probably would have waited that. But if I wasn't an employee, I probably would have waited that long for that ride.
I mean, to me at that point, like that was, I'm 17 years old. I've got no other way of experiencing that kind of speed,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. And it was just, it was 100% worth the wait. One of the guys in chat, Woodruff, just said that he's terrified of roller coasters and still interested in this. What about, I got to ask, what about roller coasters terrifies you? Because like, I remember being a kid, actually, this is a good story. When I was 15 years old, up until that point, I was absolutely terrified of roller coasters. I was afraid of the height. Just okay, so you're afraid of the height and the speed. I was terrified of every aspect of roller coasters, right? And then with Halloween comes Fright Fest at Six Flags,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I went to Fright Fest with a few friends, and there was a girl there that I had a bit of a crush on. And at the end of the night, everybody wanted to ride what is now Bizarro. It used to be Medusa, and I didn't want to look like a pussy. So I'm like, fuck. I got to get on this ride. I'm gonna like shit my pants. I'm gonna be even more. But I was like, all right, I got to go along with this. Um, Out of context, what sounds bad? Um, so I really like. I didn't want to look, you know, bad. Not going on the roller coaster. I was like, I got to do this. Well, yeah, I guess that does sound out of context. Um, So I'm sitting up, going up the lift hill. I'm like, my heart's pounding the whole time we're waiting online because we had to wait for like half an hour. And like, my heart's pounding. It's like 40 degrees outside and I'm like sweating bullets. And we're sitting on in the station and I'm just like, okay, just get through this. Just get through this. You'll be okay. We're going up the lift hill. And I'm like, the I guess you could call it panic, but the anxiety rather is just building and building and building. You make it down, and then you go over the top of the crest of the hill, um, and from that point forward, like once we made it to the bottom of the hill, I was like, okay, I officially like roller coasters now because it was like I had built it up in my mind to be something that it wasn't, and it just I don't know, and chat saying that Final Destination 3 did it for me. I hated roller coasters so much after that. Um, yeah, I guess I get it, but I think about all the other stuff that I do. Like I go snowboarding, I have a motorcycle. I'm like, if something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. Um, but yeah, if you can get at the courage, I would highly recommend giving it a shot on something that isn't maybe King Ka.
Uh,
Um,
I would, if you're scared of heights, do King Ka.
you think
Like,
so?
so I got a story with my brother. My brother, he didn't like the heights on ride. Like, he was going on all the smaller rides, and we always like, oh, come on, ride, ride. So when I worked at King Ka, I said, listen, I can get us an exit pass. I'm done with work at this. I can come home, pick you up. I'll get the exit pass from my supervisor, and we'll get right on. Because he was like, oh, I'd probably go on King Ka because it's only 23 seconds. Like, you're up and over it. You don't even
Yeah.
realize how high you're up there. And I'm like, I got to pass. I'm coming home. He's like, all right, I'm ready. Sure enough, got him. We went right on, got on, front row, boom. He loved it. And then he was going on all the big stuff. But
Yeah.
it's that quick. You don't realize how tall you are up there. You
Yeah.
really don't.
All right. So he's in London, so he doesn't know what King Ka is. Give me a second to
Uh,
Google what it looks like so I can pull up a picture.
I think I think Thorpe Park. Does he know Thorpe Park?
Let's find out.
Because I believe it should be Speed at Thorpe Park would be the smaller
So,
version.
okay, so I'm gonna drag this onto the screen. Hopefully he can see it. Um, he has heard of Thorpe Park. Okay, so this is King Ka.
Oh, Stealth. Stealth at Thorpe Park would be the smaller version.
Okay.
It's 205 feet tall, but it's pretty much the same layout.
Oh, okay. So it's just it's like a baby version of King Ka.
Yeah.
That actually looks kind of cool. Now, how fast does that go?
I think it's 80 miles an hour.
That's still pretty intense.
That's fast enough.
I mean, you know what I love about it is just the idea of being like launched off.
Mm-hmm.
That's what like King Ka, the fact that they strap you in and you're on the flat track and it's like you see the signs that say put your head back, and there have been times where like I was like leaning forward, not paying attention, and like got whipped back into the seat, and it was just like, this is fucking great. I also like, but when you think about it, like Nitro goes 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's still, I mean, that's not slow.
No, it's not. It's fast. It's not joke about.
How tall is Nitro? I forget.
Nitro's 230.
Okay, so basically, uh, the one in Thorpe Park is the round about the same height and
Yeah,
goes around the same speed, but it's just like an up and over
yeah,
before you know it kind of thing.
yeah,
I have to say the view at the top of those rides is unbelievable.
yeah. No,
It's
it is.
unbelievable.
Especially if you do it at night and on a clear night. You look to the left and you could kind of see the lights of Philly, and then you look to the right and there's like lights of New York in the distance. But it's got to be like a clear night.
I'll have to keep that in mind because I didn't know that you could see that far out when you're on the top of
Like
King
you
of
like
Powell.
there's a big cluster and a big glow. Like
Yeah,
and it's like yeah,
no,
that's
that's
Philly
pretty
and
cool.
that's
So here's a question, and this is my legitimate fear with roller coasters, and I think that this is more realistic of what's going to happen or what could happen. So, um, my like biggest fear on roller coasters, and I don't know how rational this is, considering what you're actually on the ride to do, is something happening at the very top of the lift hill and having to get off and walk down like the stairs on Nitro. For anybody listening, what I mean is, as you're going up the lift hill of a roller coaster, on one side or both sides on some rides, there are like metal stairs,
they're maintenance stairs.
maintenance stairs.
Yeah.
Um, my biggest fear would be having to walk down those stairs with no restraints or anything like that. Have you ever seen it where they had to evac someone on a lift hill and people actually had to walk down those stairs?
I know of it happening, but I was like working at my, Superman.
Yeah. What
And
ride
I've
did it
had to
happen at?
evac people. Oh, I've heard Nitro. I've heard El Toro. People had to get evac off the lift. It happened, especially when you lose power at the park. It Whenever there's a huge power outage at the park, it just happens that every coaster has a train on the lift, and
Of course.
then they're, oh, we got to evac every, go up there, and it's all safely designed. The stairs are fine. It's just you take your time walking down. It's
You know what freaks me out about them is the fact that they're not solid. Like they're like grated metal. So
yeah,
you can
but they're
see through it.
yeah,
So you could see like that's what freaks me out is the fact that like I can look down and I'm not strapped to anything.
mm,
And what's interesting about that, um, that's Satan's plan. I don't know if it's Satan's plan. Um, like what blows my mind too is that like I say that that's like my biggest fear, but then I think about like when I go snowboarding, you're on the chair lift, and you're 30 feet in the air, 40 feet in the air on some of them, um, and I'll just hang off the side of that when I got to get off of it. And there's like,
yeah,
if I drop, there's a good chance that I'm going to be pretty hurt.
yeah.
And I don't even think twice about it. And no, I couldn't imagine walking down on a rainy day. Although I don't know that I'd be on the roller coaster if it was a rainy day. Because,
Depends on how hard the rain.
well, yeah, but here's my whole thing. I've been on a motorcycle at 60 miles an hour in the rain. And rain hurts at 60 miles an
I don't
hour.
know. I've been on Nitro in the rain. It was not fun.
Yeah. So even a
And it wasn't on
drizzle.
purpose.
Yeah, no, obviously, but even a drizzle, I don't know that I would want to be on a ride that moves that quick, just because
Yeah,
of the fact that like rain, it's it becomes it feels like little rocks hitting you
yeah.
as you're going along, and yeah, but yeah, that's like my biggest fear is having to walk down one of those rides.
That's
Now,
that's not as bad because so when I worked there, one of the things during your training, the
mhm,
first day, like so I was at Screen Machine.
yeah.
Um, one of the first training exercises they do, we all walk to the top of the lift hill. So
Oh,
Screen
really?
Machine at the time was 178 feet tall, and it was funny. So like you got the people that were like, there was a couple enthusiasts that I worked with, and people that just like I can do this, and we'd all be at the top. Then you look down, and there's some people halfway up the lift, and then there's another group of people that are like 10 feet up
Yeah.
on the lift. So anyone that couldn't go to the top pretty much got switched to a different department because that was one of the reasons they said if the ride
Uh,
broke down, you
you have
have
to
to be
walk
able
up.
to go and talk to the train, be like, hey, we have a mind, a little slow up right now. We're either gonna get you going or we might have to evac you. So
Oh
you
man,
have to be able to walk up there. And I loved it. Going up the top of the
I
screen machine, it was such a nice view. the crazy part, like, you're on a steel structure, but those structures move because
Yeah.
they have to. So I remember some windy days, you're like the one training, I think it was my second year in rides, and we're up there. It was a windy day, and we're at the top of Screen Machine, up the lift, top, like the crest. This tower is swaying a good foot back and forth. So I was like, I had one hand on the handrail. Like usually, like the year before, I was like, oh, I'll chill. But I'm like, this is swaying pretty good. I kind of need an extra hand, just because like it literally was a foot back and forth. You're swaying. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but it's
I
physics.
mean,
It
let
has
me
to
put it to you this way.
move.
It's my biggest fear. Um, I think if push came to shove and I had to do it, like if I really wanted a job working that ride or something like that, I could probably make it happen. Because I mean, at the same time, I think about the fact that just going on roller coasters 15 years ago was something that I wouldn't even consider.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I wouldn't want to. I would do it once just to be able to get like certified and say like whatever, but I wouldn't do it for fun. I can tell you that.
I would do it for
That's
fun.
probably where I would draw the line. I don't know that I would do that for fun.
And that actually, well, Scream or Superman's lift hill is not as tall. It's only 115 feet. But so one of the startup, but like when you first turn the ride on, you have to do a stop check. So you have to hit each emergency stop button. It just makes sure that button's working.
Mm-hmm.
There's one at the top of the lift. So I was always the one like, I got that one. Let me run up the stairs, hang out there for a second, enjoy the view, hit it, and then
So
go back.
Superman is a unique ride in that, like, because of the position, you start off seated,
Yeah.
and then the whole seat shifts forward, right? So
Yeah, you
you're now
swing back,
laying
so now
against,
you're laying it.
yeah, you're laying against your harness, um, and the lift hill has nothing below it. How
Mm.
do you evac someone from that
There's an
ride?
evac platform. So if you ever, well, next time you go on it, at the base of the lift hill, there's a gray platform with a control panel. So if it got stuck at the top, which we did, that was one of our training. You'd have to practice. Like we'd put one of the supervisors in the harness, stop it on the lift hill, and then maintenance would come. You'd move the platform up, and it gets like pins lock it in to like level it out almost,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of be more at an angle for the person. That the handrails that are going up on the stairs, there's sections. You can remove a section. So then
Okay.
you remove the section that lines up with the platform. So now you have like a direct way to walk onto the stairs. Then there's tools to manually unlock the seat, and then you would
Okay.
kind of like unlock them and pull the harness, and they almost like step out of it onto the platform, and then
So
um,
with that, is there any like safety protocol to make sure that you're unlocking the right harness?
you have keys only to that. So each harness has a key. So you put the key into the harness, and then you turn it, and that unlocks that harness. You're not
Oh,
unlocking. You manually have to do each individual seat. It's not
oh,
like you're
wow.
hitting a button and it's going to do all of them. It's
Right. No, well, no, I'm thinking more like, okay, you look on the top of the track and there's one that releases that row or something like
no,
that.
so that's for station use only. That uses like a piston. Like you're not going to be able to, the force that needs to press that, you're not going to be able to do it by hand.
Okay.
So the
So that
harness itself has
there's no way that you're going to accidentally unlock the wrong
no,
harness
no, you're not.
and someone
You
drops right
literally
off the
have a
lift hill.
key. You put it in the center. You do that. There's a switch to undo your feet because Superman locks your feet in, and then you have
Hmm.
a stick that you slide down the back of it that hits a lever that unlocks the vest because there's a vest restraint that gets
Yeah.
locked too. So it's like you unlock the feet, their feet are loose. You turn the key all the way to lock. You hit the vest, and then you pry open with two people because you want it to slowly open, and then they kind of walk. Just they step out into the platform and walk it out, and then they get on the stairs, and
Yeah.
then you escort them down.
So now sticking with evac, because this actually is of interest to me. When Batman and Robin was still in existence, and the Batman side was an inverse of what King Kai is, smaller but
Yeah,
inverse. Where
inverted top hat
yeah,
is
so
what it's
basically
called.
you would go up, and then it would come back down, but you were on the inside of the track rather than the outside, so you were upside down at the top. Um, correct me if I'm wrong, but it got stuck at the top of that at one point, didn't it?
No,
Oh,
that was a rumor. The only time that it has ever gotten stuck upside down, and it was only the last car, so in the barrel rolls. So if you looked at the barrel rolls, it would kind of curve up, and then it would like flatten out, and you'd start the barrel roll, and then it would dip a little bit after the barrel roll, and then it would go up the spike. It would valley up there, and the last car, because it's in the barrel roll, would be the peel would be upside down. That's where they got stuck for a little bit of time, but then they just come and push it down to where it valleys.
So if a ride got stuck upside down, how do they evac people?
They have to push it so it levels out to a different area.
How do you push something like that?
You get a crane, like the word is now escaped me. A high lift or something, that you could bring,
like a scissor lift or something.
Yeah,
like that.
something like that, or a boom one that has it, and you just go and you have two mechanics like push it one way or the other because.
So like you manually, there's nothing that attaches the track or anything like that.
But they should not get stuck upside down. Like it's meant to roll one way or the other. Like it's not going to be perfectly stuck up there.
Well, didn't
no brakes on it? There's not.
I feel I know it was one of the Batman rides. I feel like got stuck upside down.
The only time it did was the last car got stuck on the barrel roll, but then you just kind of give it a shove.
Did Batman the Ride ever get stuck upside down?
Not that I know. I've never heard that.
For some reason, I could have sworn at some point, like years ago, it was.
Like I said, I know Batman and Robin has gotten stuck, but the last car was in the barrel roll, and that was upside down.
And then they just push it.
They just move it, and then it valleys at the bottom, and that's where there's actually there was a platform there because it would get stuck there anyway, so they have a nice little evac platform. So
it was basically like, all right, we know that this is a weak point of the ride. We're gonna just, we're gonna make it happen here. Yeah. That's I don't know if that's comforting or if that's like, well, couldn't you have just designed a better ride?
Yeah, but like they always have to plan for like, all right, if you lose power midway through the ride and you might not get a full launch.
Good point.
You have to have at least some kind of place to safely evac people off in case of that extreme scenario.
Are there any other rides that use that same launch technology? Because they had unlike the aircraft carrier launch system,
their LIM motors.
Yeah, the limb motor with magnets.
There's a lot with the magnets.
Really?
They're building new ones still with it.
Even though they would knock out the power grid in most places? They're
designed a little bit differently.
Better.
They use better parts.
Yeah.
It's just the way that was designed, it just wasn't. That's why it's no longer here, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a shame because that was a pretty cool ride. And the fact that it was
a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I never got the opportunity to ride the Batman side. Was there a reason that they never used the Batman side?
Great Adventure has a lot of staffing issues. They can't really get a lot of people to work. That was another sub factor of why Kingda Ka went to the one station. So when you had all 4 stations running, like both sides, you needed just 8 employees just to check the train. Then you had 1 at launch, and then you'd have like someone at the front of the ride, and someone splitting. Like you'd need a lot of employees just to run that one ride. Mm-hmm. So now that they only knocked it down to the one side, that's half the employees now to run it. So that's always a sub factor. And
right, no, I totally understand that.
So
but what I mean
is enough people to run the side, both sides of Batman and Robin, they would run Robin because it was closer. That was the right side, so it was closer to the you didn't have to wrap all to the back of the building. And
so it was just purely a distance. Like
it was just easier. Then the people enter the building, they go up that ramp, and then they go right in the station, not go all the way back and through and wrap and.
Okay.
And that was more fun than Batman anyway. It had the Cobra roll, so I had like the 2 big loops.
Yeah, I guess. So you know what though, I would have liked if like they alternated or like something where from this time to this time we're going to do Batman, this time to this time we're going to do Robin or whatever. Because like I never got to experience the Batman side, and I was always
It
bummed
was
about it
fun.
because it was never open. I know the Robin side's supposed to be better, but
Be nice to try
uh,
the other side.
yeah, it'd be nice to just know what it's like.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
all right,
because I
so
can say I've actually ridden every version of that ride. So when it opened, I got to ride both sides, Batman and Robin, with the
the old
restraint.
shoulder harnesses.
And then when they switched to the lap bars, rode both sides with the lap bars. And then after it had that accident and it went to the S turns, I got to ride both sides with the S turns before it, because Batman side only ran for a week and a half before it was closed, and Robin ran for like a month before they fined. So I was like, all right, I got to ride that ride every way it was allowed.
Yeah. I
Out of
feel like that ride has had a
10.
lot of iterations too. Like I've seen like modifications to rides later on, stuff like that. But like I feel like that ride had a lot of, I don't want to say issues, but I mean it did have a lot of issues, but like they changed the track out, they changed the harnesses, they changed so much about it that it was almost a totally different ride 3 or 4 years after it opened.
Yeah, they
Almost.
just tried to evolve it into whatever, if it had a problem and
They just
change
modded
it
it.
to,
Yeah.
they
All right. So we'll end on this note. What's your favorite roller coaster of all time anywhere that you've been?
So I mentioned Steel Vengeance as being a top one. It's actually number two for me.
Mm-hmm.
So the number one is X2 out in Six Flags Magic Mountain, which Six Flags Magic Mountain is another fantastic park, and the coasters out there are like really good. But Cedar Point has a little bit better of a collection. But for X2, it's a very unique ride. So you sit on the side, similar to how Joker is,
Mm-hmm.
like two people on the side of the track, and you do spin, but it's not a free for all spin. So this ride, the track, it's a fourth dimension coaster, and it has a fourth rail. So you have two rails, which the actual train rides on, which the main body of the train. There's secondary rails that a gear has a wheel on it, and there's a gear to a gearbox that's attached to your seat. So depending on how far they move that fourth rail away from that, turns the gearbox and rotates you. So now at certain points in the ride, you're meant to like flip on on this up straightaway, you're going to do a backflip, or like the drop, you do a backflip into facing straight down the drop. So the whole drop you're facing down, and then it does a front flip out of it. And it's an unreal experience because it's this rotating craziness that's still controlled because of the gearbox.
Yeah.
And it's just an awesome, well put ride. And the science behind it, just one, because watching Discovery Channel when I was a kid and when it was built, I was like, this ride is awesome. And then when I finally, a couple years ago, I had an opportunity to go out there, which everyone calls me, this is why I'm a coaster enthusiast. And like, I literally flew out of here, out of New Jersey on a Saturday, left here at 4:00, landed in LA at like 7, whatever, their time. My
Mm-hmm.
buddy who lives out there picked me up from the airport. We drove up to the 50 minutes to Magic Mountain, stayed at the hotel. Sunday, open to close, the whole park. And then Monday morning, got on a plane and came home. So I literally was there just for this park. And like, that ride was nuts. And like, so when I usually go on trips, like if I go on guy trips, I'll text my wife or like at the end of the night, give her a call. Like I don't really I'm just, because you're running around a theme park. I can't, I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really on
yeah.
my phone the whole time. I got off X2. I didn't know what to do with myself. I called my wife. I said, I've never experienced this much like adrenaline and like flips. And like, it blew my mind. I was like, I literally don't know what to do with myself. So I had to call you. And I was like, just that experience, I was like, that's the best coaster I've ever been on. Just, it's like, wow.
I'm
Like
gonna have
that
to get
ride is
out. I've
just,
seen videos of that coaster. I know what you mean by it's got the fourth rail that controls the
yeah,
flips. Um, didn't they have a lot of problems with that too?
they did. So it opened up as X, and they had a lot of problems with like going through parts. And so, and the company that built it then went went bankrupt. But then another company came in. They kind of put different trains, a little bit lighter trains, and rethemed it, and they got it running pretty good now. I only got the experiences at X2 after it had the newer trains, and
I mean, was the track modified at all?
not so. It was pretty much the track was all
The
right. It
track.
just was the trains just weren't they were clunk. They're I guess the weight of them was an issue and caused a little more headaches and wear and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, now it's supposedly it's running good. They added fire elements. There's sound system now to it. But just even if they took that all away, that ride is just it's awesome.
Intense.
It's an experience. Like there's nothing else like it.
I'll have to, if I'm ever in California, I'll have to definitely check that ride out.
I don't know if it opens up, flights are pretty cheap. You just
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too.
you just
Now
want
is
to
the
shoot
fact
over there.
that
We could just
flights
do a long
are.
weekend.
Well, the other we got to wait until things actually open up first.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know.
you know,
I get ahead of myself.
we've been, you know, we're currently the last state under lockdown, under stay-at-home orders. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the fuck out of the house because I'm losing my mind.
Oh, I know. I still have my Florida trip planned, and two of the three parks I'm going to have announced opening dates in June, and I'm supposed to go the end of July. So I'm like, we're looking good.
There you go.
I'm just waiting for the last one to open up, and the new coasters should be open. The coasters were testing, and then they shut it down. So
Yeah. Well,
those new rides should be open for me. So.
yeah. Nice. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out today. And thank you for everybody that was actually live in chat with us today. If there's anything that any other topics that you think that we should cover, if there's anything that you have an interest in, and I can find someone that can come on the podcast and talk about it, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And on that note, I'll talk to everybody later.
Yeah.
So we are no longer streaming, and let me stop the recording.